What you can probably see is that whether Zach's talking about wealth or I'm talking about health stuff, today we're talking about food. Really, it's a rabbit hole. Everything's a rabbit hole. But when you think you've come up to one topic, then you start to realize like, oh, there's a whole lot more to dive into. So just know that this is really the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. And for those of you on Zoom, if you're actually there with your cameras off, you skulking lurkers, I will be excited to see you guys throw stuff in the chat. We'll be keeping an eye out. All right, Dan, I see you there. Welcome. Now, from there, a couple different things. One, actually, so Zach didn't even know this, Beth didn't even know this, but I had a great little tag team question basically going on around psychology of what you know, what you don't know, and how that causes you to act for your betterment or not. And so that's going to tie into some stuff we get into food. We're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. That wasn't on the agenda, but we're going to do it. But anyway, the plug that I made for those of you, because I didn't have the mic, the book Think Again by Adam Grant. It's going to get you thinking about yourself, how you think, maybe rethinking the things you think you know, that you thought. So with that said, let's get into it. From here, we are talking about food. We're talking about the mind to mouth model today. And the mind to mouth model, the brain to bowel concept is all about systematically unpacking food and making it actually work for you. Most people are guessing. Most people are really rolling with a shot in the dark because food is a massive topic. It's a whole universe. More on that later. So first things first, we're going to review some things. What do you guys remember? People in chat, I'm just going to start saying your names here. People in the room, or we are recording, that's good. What is something you remember from last time? Anything, even what I was wearing, whatever. Greed. Greed. Oh, green. I thought you said greed. I was like, I don't think we covered that one, but yeah, okay. Yes.
I have a note. Fitness should cover today's needs, tomorrow's goals, any future pursuits.
Fitness should cover today's needs, tomorrow's goals, and any future thing you might want to do. I love that. Yes. Anything else? Sonara, Dan, Shelly. Who else is here? Let's see. We got Robbie in the room. Felicia. Any other things that you guys took away from previously?
What was the question there, Max?
Oh, wait, 1 second.
Dan is saying something.
What do we remember?
Oh, yeah. Yes, what do you remember? Oh, let's see. So now we're getting me coming through.
I know, I was trying to.
Dang it, Jordan. Okay, wait, Dan, if you can say that again. Wait, how are we doing this? Okay, so Dan, I'm gonna shush. You're on in 3, 2, hit the.
What was the question again? What do we remember?
Dan, I'd be swearing more if we weren't recording right now. All right, that's fine. The question was, what do you guys recall from last time? Any takeaways, anything like that? Okay, Shelly says sleep is key to capacity. Sleep is key to capacity. Sleep is key to capacity. Absolutely. If you do not have sleep, things get harder, right? You don't have less energy, less gumption, less fire for your day. Absolutely.
You're talking about falling back on systems.
Falling back on systems. Tell me more about that, Zach.
Whatever the system you have is really what you're going to fall back to. So if you don't
Yeah.
have one.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you fall back. Your systems represent a default that you fall back to. So if you don't have a system, Zach says, what the heck is the default? I might be paraphrasing here. What the heck is the default that you fall back to? Well, in the end, just adjusting the camera, everybody. All right. So, right, what we basically bring it down to is you're going to fall back to something. You're going to do something. The question is that something actually supportive of the life and the health you want? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. So let's break it down. For starters, first thing to know here is that the fitness you need is defined by your goals. We talked about that last time. We're doing a review here, folks, just in case you're wondering. You're like, I thought we were talking about food. Yes, Dan, I agreed. Sleep is key. If you don't sleep, man, things get tough. The fitness you need is defined for your goals. Beth brought it up previously. It's not really about doing exercise just because it's, quote, good for you. It is good for you. Generally speaking, it is. But that's not very motivating to me when someone's like, you should do it because it's good for you. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I want to do that now. No, I'm not going to do it. I got other things to do. Don't exercise just because it's good for you. Instead, we have to think about exercise being relevant to your goals. It's going to get you what you want. It's going to help you to own your body and what it's capable of. And then it has real world carryover. So it carries over to your life, in the present, in the future, in the long-term future. Now, with that said, it's not about falling in love with exercise for its own sake. It's about falling in love with what your body can do. Because if you love what your body can do, if you love how your body feels, if you love how your body looks, all these things, you're going to enjoy whatever the heck fitness looks like for you. If not, it gets a lot tougher. So, as Jordan said, today, fitness should cover today's needs, tomorrow's goals, and any future pursuit. Because if you set yourself up generally well with a nice, big, broad foundation, generally speaking, you should be about 12 weeks away from leveling up in something that matters to you if you want to. You are physically capable of, peaking is the term here, but peaking for something that is substantial and fairly challenging for you. 12 weeks out. If it feels like it's going to take a half year to get there, that means the base is still not built yet. We had an essential sidebar on stress. We're now officially in the sauna season, and I do have to put a plug in for a local business that I have not tried. It's like, recommending a book that you haven't actually read yet. But I just found out this place is called the Nordic Nook. It's in Golden Valley, apparently. It's like this kind of sauna cold plunge experience, but it appears to be a kind of a backyardy vibe. Either way, we talked about saunas, we talked about stress. And the thing about stress is that it's not inherently bad. In fact, stress is a signal, stress is a stimulus, stress is something that encourages your body to make change. That's important because in fitness and food, it's a signal. We then discussed working out versus training. And the gist is working out is very short term. It's more about a feeling, and training is more long term and about getting results. Working out is more for the moment because it feels good. Training is more for going somewhere. And we talked about the 30% rule. Does anyone remember what this thing was? 30% rule. To sustain results, it takes like 30% of the effort as it took you to attain the results initially. Yes, thank you, Zach. 30% rule. It's the lazy person's, like really happy realization, like, oh my God, I don't have to do this at this level forever. Correct. All right, and then I have this big old chart. And the gist is this: if people say, hey, I want to look or feel a certain way in terms of body composition, they say I want to be more toned. Technically, what they're almost always talking about is having less body fat long term and having more muscle long term. Pretty much nobody, unless they have a genetic disorder, is born with a significant amount of muscle. We're all pretty soft when we start, and that doesn't really change too much as we go on through life, because muscle is expensive. It's nice to have and it's fun to look at and can do stuff, but in the end, it's really expensive for the body to build. So we're not going to do it just easily. From there, non-exercise activity, walking, fidgeting, waving your arms at slides. That is our biggest source of calorie burn in the day. Not exercising. Exercise, if you try to make that your biggest source of calorie burn, that is a road to crash hormones and a road to reduced results. So resistance training is your next priority, then maybe a little bit of cardio, and we're gonna be getting into food today. So let's talk about food. People in the room, people on Zoom, I wanna know, when I say food, what is food to you? What does food do for you? What is your relationship with food? Love it. Mike just loves it. The center of my whole life. Yes. Fuel to keep me going. Absolutely, Shelly. Shelly, the machine, like, give me the fuel. Absolutely, though. Yes, it is fuel for sure. It is fun. You can try new things. Go new places. It is expensive. Why does it cost money? This is outrageous. Yes. Absolutely. Ooh, coffee too. Yes, coffee. Is it a food source, Shelly? I don't know. All right. Well, we can think about that. We can discuss. I would include it in the food conversation. So food is a whole lot of stuff. Food is many things. At a basic level, it is to survive, much like this adorable raccoon that I found in a stock image. Food provides us basic micronutrients, macronutrients, calories, things we need to just literally keep living, keep fueling your system. The RDA, the recommended dietary allowance, is that minimum. If you ever see like on like a cereal box or something, because I'm just going to talk about the cereal box numbers. If you see that percentage, that percent of like, this is like 20% of your daily value. That's 20% of your daily value to hopefully not get sick. That's actually more so what it is. The RDA is not an aspirational number. It's like a minimum that is like a really good thing for most of us to have. And they're out of date and usually too low for some nutrients. What's up, Jordan?
So like when you say that, do you mean like the percentages and like the nutritional facts for it's like
Yeah.
30% of your daily sodium?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sodium's kind of loaded. The protein number, that was pretty good, I think. The carbs number, that's loaded, fat's loaded. Most of the things on a nutrition label are loaded and or have been found to be a little bit out of touch and out of date. However, that said, people on Zoom, if you're looking at like vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, stuff like that, if you're at least hitting 100% of that number, whatever it is, and you notice it's the same, whether I'm looking at the cereal box or Tia, who's a different size than me, is looking at the cereal box, it's the same number, but either way, it's a good general baseline of nutrition. Yeah. For most people, it's higher.
What
Yeah.
about the 2,000 calories per day that's out there?
We should all be eating 2,000 calories a day. It's recorded right now. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, that's a great question, Zach, which is that calorie needs are very individual dependent. And whatever you might punch into a calculator, like I'm this tall, like this is my gender, this is my age and all that, it's also going to be very dependent on your life because fun fact, if we had a bunch of Tia clones in the room, then we had like 10 of them, they could all actually have from multiple universes, I guess they would all have different metabolisms. And so it's based on how you live your life, how you have lived your life, and how your hormones and body metabolism are shaped over time. So 2,000 calories is a nice working rule for some people. For other people, it's way too high. For other people, it's way too low. And for other people, it's kind of close. So 2,000 calories is kind of a general rule. Wouldn't recommend it as a default, but you could try it. If anything, if you're curious about what 2,000 calories does to you, just do it. Do it for like the next month. If you lose weight, that means it's less than your maintenance level. If you gain weight, it's higher than your maintenance level. If you maintain the same, it's your maintenance level. Yeah. N of 1 experiments are great. Now, second level, what food can do, it helps us to thrive. It helps us to survive. It helps us to thrive. So the survival piece is just getting your nutrients, really. Having enough calories that you're not like getting sick and being hospitalized. On the whole, though, we talk about food. We tend to talk about food in terms of this like level 2 thrive. I've got goals kind of thing. How do I use food for my goals? And then, does anybody like bok choy? I know this is a bowl of bok choy. Does anybody like bok? Are you Alec, by the way? Okay, because when I said Alec, everyone like looked at you because I was like, Alec's psychotic and but lovable at the same time. Because anyway, I love the frames. All right, so yes, Dig's on bok choy as well. So.
Oh yeah, they do glow in the dark.
Oh, what? They glow in the dark. Oh my God. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. No, we're not gonna do that right now. Okay. So food, we mentioned it's the center of my my center of my life. I love food. I enjoy food. Food is also a great thing for enjoyment. It's also great for community, which we don't really do that much right now. Yeah, it's we don't really like eat with strangers. You don't find yourself in a cafeteria all that often nowadays, like once you're out of school. But on the whole, it's a fantastic way to nurture community. I think there's a book, it's called like Never Eat Alone, something like that. And it's this premise of using food as a connection point with people you don't know yet. And from there, try new stuff. Jordan mentioned this, try new stuff, create things, explore, go to places, try cuisine. Food has all these different facets to it. So sometimes if we're thinking health and fitness, people will think, well, okay, we're gonna talk about how to eat less and how to maybe have more protein. Yeah, we'll talk about that stuff, but that's such a small facet of the universe. So from there, go to this next piece. Let's talk about Matryoshka nesting dolls, because that's fun. So a quick zoom out here is that food is very messy. Food is a very messy topic. We have so much noise going on in our own minds as well as in the conversations with those around us. Experts, as we talked about, are pseudo-experts around us, especially the pseudo-experts. And then, it's really primal as well. It's very loaded. You've been literally eating since you were in the womb. You've been consuming since day negative everything. You are able to default to certain patterns of how you consume food and have been practicing it for an insanely long period of time that if we are what we do and what we do often, well, a lot of our food behaviors are really entrenched and they can be changed and they can be shaped and they might need to be for some of our goals. But the thing about that we have to know is that it is emotionally loaded, right? Food is emotionally loaded. It represents so many things, good, bad, in between. For some people, food is very comforting. For some people, food is very associated with family. For some people, a certain food is associated with a certain negative experience in your life. You're like, I remember what I was eating at that breakup, And so anyway, there's so much that can go into it. But in the end, food is really messy because it is filled with these little nesting dolls. You like take out a thing, like, oh my God, there's another one. You take, oh wait, there's another one, and this is amazing. That's how food works. It is incredibly complicated. I won't say food on its own is as complicated as wealth and finance. I'd say that is far more nested, but at the same time, this is full of nested moments as well. And it's nested with pitfalls, but what's really nice are resolutionary checklists that can deal with those pitfalls. We're gonna, of course, talk about that. And food requires more systems than most things, honestly, that you're gonna have. So has anyone said this before? I know what to do, I just don't do it. People are nodding their heads, this is good. Okay, fantastic. Well, shame on all of you. No, all right, so yeah, I know what to do, I just don't do it. It's like one of the most common things you hear. People usually say that around food. And here's where we're gonna talk about the pseudo-expert conversation, the Dunning-Kruger effect, and where I go, oh, that's kind of true. And so this is where I get to be a bit of a dick. So what I find is that most people have some food knowledge, yes. You also have your intuitive knowledge of self, which is so key. But in the end, what most people don't realize, of course, myself included, is how much we don't know, right? If you don't know you don't know it, how can you know you don't know it? So with that said, just kind of look at this for a second. We've got in the green here, this small sliver, it's what you know. Great. Blue, second biggest sliver, what you know that you don't know, right? You know don't know it. That's good. And then the biggest section, the ignorance of ignorance itself, what I don't know that I don't know. And again, I'm right here with everybody in terms of how this all functions. I bring this up because with food, we have this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, who's heard of this by any chance? Zach? Okay, fantastic. Anyone on Zoom? Zoomers? Okay, not saying anything. All right.
It seems like the pseudo experts always know the most too, and the smartest people we usually say that they don't know the most.
The pseudo experts always seem to know the most,
They say they know
and the real experts will admit that they don't know the most, or they act like they don't know the most.
they act like they don't know if they know most.
Exactly. So that is exactly it. So I'm just going to restate the Dunning-Kruger effect here on top of what Zach said, which is totally right. Basically, what they found in this study, Dunning-Kruger, is that people who are like truly they know nothing, they know they know nothing. They don't have any information. They're like, I know I don't know anything here. Then the real experts know just how big everything really is. And they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much. And so what they do is they underestimate their knowledge, even though they are the actual experts in the room. And then the people who have like a bit of information grossly overestimate how much they know, because they know just enough to feel like they know something, but not nearly enough to realize how little that they actually know. And so thanks to things like Instagram, the internet, social media, it's really possible to find a lot of people who are experts around food, who are purporting things that are either like just maybe not that helpful for you, or sometimes harmful, not as often, but sometimes harmful, or sometimes just really misleading. And you might actually just like start living your life via this concept that you picked up on the internet that is actually like fighting your progress, which is kind of crazy. Low carb diets. Okay, I said it. So for those of you who've gotten great results with low carb diets, they actually do work for many people. That's the complex part. So if you're sitting there going like, wait, but didn't you just say, yes, it's all contradictory. So let's reframe food here for a second. Because if we think we know stuff, then we have to be willing to think we don't know stuff for a second. So here's what I'm going to put out here. This is not just my opinion. This is also based in research and based on a lot of coaching experience around the world. So for starters, there's no bad food, though this looks like way too much sweetness for me, to be honest. It's like an M&M cake with M&Ms inside it. So with that said, I would consider this a bad food from a taste standpoint, but what do I know? All right, so there's no bad food. Let's start with that. The concept here is 80-15-5. Generally speaking, for most people's goals, 80% of the time you'd want to eat something that seems generally healthy, right? You put that plate in front of somebody else on the street and most of society would say, yeah, that looks pretty healthy. 80% of the time. 15% of the time you eat stuff that we consider kind of junk. You know, that's something where, you know, it's like, it's more processed, it's more of a box, you got it at a restaurant and that's not really that great, whatever. It's not like crazy bad, but you know, it's not like health food. And then from there, the last bit, 5% of the time, definitely junk. You're eating the sheet cake from Costco and you don't blink. Now, the kicker though, is I didn't say the whole sheet cake. And the reason why I need to clarify that is because in the end, we're talking about what you eat here. There are a few, if it's actually a food, by the way, if it's actually a food and you eat it, it's probably not a bad food. That puts morals on it in a way that starts to bind us more than we need to, but it is about how much you have, right? So if I had just a little sliver of if I had an M&M from this ridiculous image here, that's not a problem for like anybody's health, even the most diabetic of people. But at the same time, if you eat this whole thing in one sitting, that dose is a very large effect that you're going to get. So with food, it's much more important to think about the dose and how much am I getting, because that's the effect you're going to get. Does that make sense? Okay, does this look good to anyone in the room, by the way? I'm not judging if that's, Jordan, sweets are my thing. Yeah.
Kind of junk or definitely junk, like, is there...
Thank you. Good question, Zach. So how do we classify kind of junk, definitely junk? Right. Generally speaking, healthy is going to be more like whole foods based. The expression from Jack LaLanne back in like the 50s was, if man made it, don't eat it. And so it's probably not something that we invented in terms of a food. Like it is like minimally processed. There isn't like a ton that you can probably get in a box from a convenience standpoint, but it didn't need to come in a box. Like it's like an example would just be like rice. You know, it's not inherently bad for you. It's actually quite healthy in different ways. it tends to look like categories of food that did not require like a bag, such as like M&Ms here. Kind of junk would be something that tends to be a little more processed. I think about like tortilla chips, crackers. You know, it's not junk food, but you know, people are like, oh, you know, chips are bad for you. In reality, they're not. In fact, as you well know, some chips are actually maybe better for us than other chips. But in the end, it's more processed. There is more that went into it. It was corn, and now it's like cooked in oil, added with certain seasonings, a little bit of fat and flavor added. So it's a bit more processed. And then the definitely junk one is that's just like sheet cake. Yeah, I just say sheet cake because that's kind of the realm. Because most things are actually not as junky as people think. That's the thing I guess I want to emphasize here. And it's much more about how often and how much. Now, if you had 3 meals, I'm glad you paused me because I almost jumped ahead. If you had 3 meals and 1 snack every day, which many people tend to, whether they mean to or not, that's 28 feedings in a week. I know, very primal, yeah, like feedings, yeah. And so with that said, if you're following that kind of 80-15-5 rule, I rounded some of the numbers here, but basically about 22 to 23 of those are generally healthy. 22 to 23 are generally healthy. It means you're gonna have 4 meals if you were just making everything exactly one category. 4 meals are kind of junkier, they're more processed. You know, I think like I eat meat, so I might go to Red Cow. You know, I might go to Red Cow. I love the breakfast burger. For those of you who eat meat, that thing's indulgent. I love it. And no, I don't categorize it as definitely junk. And I might say, you know, ice cream is probably going to fall into the definitely junk category just because it has no real like health benefits aside from happiness, which is good. But that definitely junk category would be like 1 to 2 meals in a week. So it's not really a huge portion of your time. What's crazy is someone hits that 80-15-5, they can get some really great results. Now, what I want to talk about is there's also no camping, no campers here. So these are all camps that I pull off the internet, which is a very entertaining search because what I found was that people use the same image for a whole bunch of diets that are not correct, which I was like, oh, I didn't even catch that. So there's one, yeah, this one's a high carb and low fat diet, but this is a very high fat, high protein diet. That's right here. It's like there's like meat and cheese, and that's like all there is. All right, anyway, so camps. Camps are the land of social media here. Camps are the land of someone you know who got great results. What you'll find is that in the end, it is possible to get results doing almost any diet. I know this because I've done almost every diet. Because if we jump to the last bullet here, they all work for the same reasons. They all work for the same reasons. It's something you can stick to. It's something you kind of like in a way. It resonates with you for some reason. It creates a physiological effect for most people. They tend to be looking at body composition. They tend to be looking at energy. They tend to be looking at, you know, how do I feel? Does my gut get ripped up when I eat this thing? And if you are seeing the results you want, they're actually all happening for the same reasons. So for example, if I talk about keto, people tend to cut out carbohydrates. They tend to reduce their protein. You usually see 70% fat, 20% protein, and 10% of your diet is carbs, which is a very low food intake on that front. I know plenty of people, and I've worked with many people who have gotten no results doing keto and feel worse for it. I also know people who've gotten great results and feel awesome for it, which is paradoxical. And so in the case of someone who, let's say, lost weight doing the keto diet, they likely found themselves in a calorie deficit. They were eating less food overall, fewer total calories. The person who gained weight on a keto diet or didn't lose weight was often eating around the same number of total calories. The kicker is that when most people make those kinds of changes, like say start the keto diet or otherwise, which I do think is a good approach for many people, especially people with epilepsy, if you are not tracking your food super diligently and you're not very skilled at tracking your food, like to know your calorie intake, you usually don't realize that you're going up or down or not doing what you think you're doing with your food. That's one of the biggest things that we find confounding this when people self-report that they did a diet. So from there, these things from like intermittent fasting or all the different variations of intermittent fasting, done it, very organ-based diet, done it, keto-based diet, done it, paleo-based diet, done it, juicing, no, haven't done that. Generally, I just died already, I don't want to do that. Like the Whole30 approach, quote, clean eating, like what is clean eating? Like, I don't, you know, it's based on somebody's rules. High carb, low fat, low carb, high fat, veganism, etc. These things are all templates. They're all general frameworks that are a really good idea that someone thought up or that someone saw to work, which doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody. That's the problem. You're all special snowflakes. So especially you people on Zoom, especially if you're not listening, you are special snowflakes. So with that said, you have to individualize your food intake either to your life or you have to change your life to match the diet itself. So sometimes people become Like they're like I'm a keto person, or like I'm a low carb, eater, or I'm a vegan. It's like your identity. And and so what you usually find is that it can work really well if you make it work for you. The number of people who get stuck are actually the ones who tend to try to fit exactly into the model. They don't change the model to fit for them, or they don't change themselves to fit into the model. There's supposedly a Chinese proverb. A lot of things, as a half Chinese person, a lot of things are attributed to Chinese people. And we'll take it, to be honest. I think it's great, and I get to tag along with it. But in the end, the expression basically goes that sometimes it's better to eat the, quote, wrong thing in the right mindset than the right thing in the wrong mindset. And the reason why is because some people get really stressed around trying to eat healthy, right? It's kind of unclear. What do I do? We're going to be navigating. And so what we find is that when you are going and you're trying to force yourself to eat healthy from a right and wrong, good, bad, moral standpoint, then it gets really stressful. And what we find is actually there's research to show that people who stress out more about their food actually have a worse hormonal, worse blood sugar response to healthy food than the person who's having a low-key response to less healthy food. I would just eat a lot of food. All these food images. So let me ask you this. Here's the deal. Camps are really interesting because they represent something that worked for somebody. And usually if it works for you, you want to share that with people, right? You have people you care about, you have people who you see around you who are struggling with something, and you want them to know that that worked. So you share that information. And sometimes it works for them, sometimes it doesn't, which is a bit of a bummer when it doesn't work. I'm not saying these camps don't work. I've gotten results with every single thing that I've tried, but they all work for the same reason. That's the thing I'm coming back to here. So let me ask you this. Have you guys found a camp or an approach to eating that has worked for you? Yes. Okay. Did it fall into any like kind of named category, or was it more just like the Mike diet?
Part of like my wind down process, like I love cooking.
Mhm.
It's like part of I probably cook dinner like for like an hour.
Yeah. Wind down, cooking dinner. I love it.
And I just moved towards like stop eating red meat.
Mm-hmm.
I eat a lot of ground turkey.
You crush ground turkey. Yes. Okay. Chicken, salmon. Great.
To the point that like I don't really like takeout food anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes we eat stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just enjoy it more. I make it more of a process. I listen to a podcast.
So your camp is like, enjoy cooking, take your time, a little less red meat, other proteins. That's not a convenient name, so I can't use that. Sorry. That's fine. But yes, exactly. That's great. So you already made it work for you, which is awesome. You guys tried any? Yes.
In a 21-day fix.
The 21-day fix. Tell me about that and how did it go?
So you have little containers,
Mhm.
because it's primarily about how much you
Little containers. Okay. Yes.
take away certain things that you might want and crave. And it says if you have 3 bites of something, it's not going to change
Mm,
your body.
right.
So, because I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted in college, being an athlete, like whatever, like
Yeah.
it did not matter.
Hmm.
And so then moving from that, I've never had to be conscious of what I'm eating. So now using that, it helps a lot, but I also can't cut myself off
Hmm.
cold turkey because all of a sudden I want something, I'm like, I'm gonna eat a whole bag of it.
Totally. Yes. Okay. So portion control strategies like the 21-day fix, basically pre-planned portions, having and making sure you still have things that you want. Right. It's not just food you hate. Okay. Yes.
I've been vegan for 2 years.
You've been vegan for 2 years.
Yes, and I would say mine is less of a diet.
Mhm.
I don't eat great things all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
I eat
yeah.
A ton of vegetables. I get protein.
Yeah.
I get a lot of things from plants. It's
Yeah.
really, really good. I also eat a lot of junk.
Mm,
So my reasons are more for ethical reasons
yeah.
than dietary reasons.
Totally.
Necessarily. So
Yeah.
it's a little different, but from that process, I've actually found new things that I enjoy maybe before I actually wouldn't have ever thought I would eat that. Like especially a lot of vegetables and
Yeah.
dishes that I was like, there's no way I would like that.
Yeah.
Now I do.
I love it. So Alec is a vegan for those of you who didn't know, and team vegan. And fun fact: the Alec on our I will say the Alec on our coaching team I mentioned last week is also a vegan. Funny enough. So with that said, psychopathic and lovable. Okay, there we go. So we got all of it. And at the same time, okay, doing it for ethical reasons, not necessarily from like a dietary standpoint, but because you're doing it enjoying more vegetables, exploring your food more, finding flavors you wouldn't have tried before. Absolutely. So there's so many perks to trying these approaches, right? For example, so I am not currently doing intermittent fasting. I highly recommend, and I did it for years. I do recommend people try it at some point. And part of the reason in intermittent fasting room, yeah.
May 22nd, 2019.
Wow, you're on a hot streak since 2019. Yes. Do you ever feel hungry?
No, I actually don't.
And so that's one of the things we often see.
I wish I would. I should probably go.
Yeah. So
I delayed going tonight. So
got it. So what we find with intermittent fasting is sometimes people find that they get more comfortable with hunger. Actually, it's very common. So that's one of the reasons I advocate intermittent fasting, even for like a little bit. Just try it for a week, try it for a day. Go for 24 hours without food. You will be fine. You won't.
I realized when I've done some 36 hours.
Yeah,
and
that's a
I
long
realized
fast, 36
that
hours.
It was a long time, like since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
that I had a hunger, like a hunger, stomach growls.
Yeah.
Like not since I was.
That's a great point because we tend to be so well fed in our society. We have this abundance of food. I mean, here's like I go into like Trader Joe's and I don't see all ripe avocados that are just at what I need in terms of ripeness. Like I got like a day before they hit peak. I'm like, this is outrageous. This is I can't believe this. And like we have this food abundance that's just off the charts. And so yeah, I do recommend trying these approaches because what you find is if you start with the template, that can work really nicely. And then you make it your own, right? Then you have to make it your own, make it work for you. Okay, so on the flip side, did anyone try something that did not work well for them?
It's always me and my husband because we always have to agree to a plan, which is so stupid. And I live with someone, it's really hard, right? But we tried the whole 30 and it failed so hard and fast.
Okay, Whole30 didn't work. Tell me why you feel like it didn't work.
I really like alcohol and I really like sugar.
I really like alcohol and I really like sugar. Well, here's a fun thing. You can be very healthy having alcohol and having sugar. I did not tell you how much, but I did say that you can have them. Now, that's the real key here, right? Because most people are like, good, stay with my default, change nothing. And that's fine. You don't have to change anything. One thing that I'll share is I've tried a lot of different things, as I mentioned before, but one that worked really well for me and then didn't work really well for me soon after was a high protein, high carb, low fat diet during a fat loss phase I did back in college. I've probably done about 11 or 12 fat loss phases in my life, which has given me a lot of understanding of the process and experience. And I remember I got great results, like the leanest I'd ever gotten in my life. And then my hormones tanked. And I was like, why did that happen? Well, it was too long a time in a caloric deficit, much too long and much too little food. And then on top of that, I was having very little dietary fat. And you need fat as a substrate for hormones, sex hormones in particular. So it's one of those things where some things actually work really well and some things stop working. There's this thing. So Alec, you're beyond the window now. So I think you've made it work. But there's this thing, I think it's known as a vegetarian or vegan honeymoon, where sometimes people, if they don't do it well, if they don't get enough food variety, they become nutrient deficient. But nutrient deficiencies don't show up for like 6 to 12 months usually, right? So you're at the 2-year mark, you've made it. And then Shelly was like, woo, Alec, in the chat. So anyway, with that said, let's talk about something here. There is no running from biology. I just want to start with that. That's why we got Bill here. There's smart and hard work. Work smarter and work harder. That's what today's all about, right? If you're going to make changes, it's going to be challenging. That's all there is to it. But in the end, we can't run from biology. So if you go on the internet, you will hear about all sorts of hacks and ways you can, trick your body and like make it through without having to do the work. In the end, there are smarter ways to do things, but you can't get away from the fact that your body will be challenged and you will be challenged. So in the end, by the way, most of those hacks or many of those hacks tend to ignore biology, either by just like ignoring how your body works at all, or how your body works beyond, let's say, 1 hour or 24 hours. So for example, your testosterone and growth hormone are significantly boosted following a resistance training exercise session for like a few hours. And then it's just back to baseline. So if someone says, hey, you need to do squats or big exercises for your legs or something like that that are going to boost those hormones, that is the case, but it doesn't last very long in a way that significantly makes changes. In fact, what makes more changes is sleeping better in a caloric surplus and a lower stress lifestyle. So with all that said, we need enough. We need enough. And of course, what is enough? Right? That's the thing. And then this is where I go, well, it depends. Well, I'm actually going to tell you of what it actually would be. So in the end, enough hydration. Rough and ready rule, people will say 1/2 ounce for every pound of body weight you have. 1/2 ounce of water for every pound of body weight you have. I would recommend getting some electrolytes, whether it's salt, a little bit of lime juice, like electrolyte tab, like a Noon tablet or something every once in a while. But on the whole, That's like what we're talking about for water. Most people dehydrated. Beth, I know you're working on it. Okay, so from here, micronutrients, micros. You start to look at that enough in like a monthly basis. Has anyone heard of scurvy? Yeah. Yeah, eat like an orange, like eat an orange like over like a month and you will not get scurvy. So most micronutrient issues are kind of on a monthly time scale in terms of like, hey, are you getting enough or you're not? Zoom and in person? Amazing. Okay. So then from a calorie standpoint, fun fact is most people panic about if they had too much food or too many calories in a given day. Well, fun fact, the average of the week is far more important in terms of your results for your body composition. 2,000 calorie a day diet, like we were talking about before, that's 14,000 calories in a week. If you added up, if you were tracking your calories, let's say you added up all the food over the week, that number is going to tell you where your body weight's probably going to go versus like, oh, I had like 3,000 in a blowout today because it was just so good. Now, I would recommend proactively looking at these numbers, not reactively like, I ate too much yesterday, I get no food today, I deserve nothing. You know, that is not recommended. Macronutrients are actually really, we look at those on a daily basis for the most part. I'm just lumping them all in there. It's why you can't eat like a huge protein-based meal at Fogo de Chao on Monday and then just like float the rest of the week. The reason why, and Alec, you'd be like, well, I'd find something better anyway. So with that said, in the end, you have macronutrients like protein is cycled on a daily basis. Carbohydrates, we generally move through those on like a daily basis, 2-day cycle. Fats, a little bit of longer cycle. Now, what I want to talk about here is biology here in the case of fasting. So there's a really interesting study that came out maybe like a few months ago. I was reading some reviews on it and it's pretty cool. Well, they basically had 3 weeks, 3 groups, and everyone was set up with some kind of food plan and some kind of exercise consistency, and everything was pretty uniform across the board, though everybody's life is different, right? Everybody's genetically different too. You had one group, which is the calorie restriction group, where every day they ate 75% of what they usually needed for food. So they were set up to be eating less than they needed, therefore they should lose weight. And they just had the same like food intake every day. Then you had a second group, which was set up to have the same calorie restriction, but they had a 0 day. They went 24 hours without food, full fast, and then 150% of their food that they needed, they had a double day. They had a double day the next day. It was just like a mega feed, which sounds like way too much to me, to be honest, but you know, you're really hungry coming off a 24-hour fast, so I guess you could do it if you wanted. And then they had another group that did the same kind of fasting, nothing, and then a double day, but they were supposed to just be at a calorie maintenance. So let's say they needed the 2,000 calories a day, then they averaged about 2,000 a day. Does that make sense so far? What happened? Okay, so mathematically, the non-fasting group and the fasting group that were both in restriction should have lost the same amount of weight. The maintenance group should have lost no weight, right? Because they're in maintenance. They should have, that's how it should have gone. But what we find is that the confounder was the fasting component here because it's more complicated, right? So over 3 weeks, excellent rate of change, by the way, is 1% of your body weight or 1 pound lost per week. Depends on what makes more sense for you. The basic calorie restriction group, every single day, they lost 4.2 pounds. So over the excellent rate of change. The double down, like the fasting and the double down group, that was also in a calorie restriction, they lost 3.5 pounds over the excellent rate of change as well. The maintenance group even lost one in like a little over a pound in total. So that was kind of like a surprise, like nice job team. From there, the thing that is most important here is that the calorie restriction group that had the same deficit every day, 92% of what they lost was body fat. The vast, vast majority was body fat. And this was tested using a good testing metric. The double down group, 46% of what they lost is body fat. So they went a whole day with nothing, then a double down day, and they were set up for the exact same calorie average, but they lost 54% lean tissue, like muscle, bone, connective tissue, water. And then in the maintenance group, only 23% of what they lost was fat. So I'm not here to bag on intermittent fasting, but the thing that we got to think about is that when it comes to biology, the body at a biological level is actually responding to the stimulus of reduced food intake for a while. So intermittent fasting, which again, I advocate for people to try and do. For some people, it's a great fit. You just have to be aware that your risk of losing muscle mass is higher. So you have to tend to other things more deliberately. Smart work and hard work. That's not my PowerPoint. This one's, so it's over here, just about to tap the wrong computer. Okay. So this was a creepy slide. This photo, I was looking at it when I put it in, I was like, I can't keep looking at this slide. All right, so before we get into classic food pitfalls, questions on anything I just tossed out here? Mm.
that. Is there like a math
Thank you.
absorption?
Y-
Or, I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
a little into the weeds maybe, but
No, this is great. Okay, so if you're curious, because we're like, this is how much protein you should get, you talk to your local bro dude at your local bro gym, and you're going to hear 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is not a bad general rule. Good general rule. It's actually higher than you need though. So me personally, I don't have a lot of appetite for protein. I eat very little meat. The vast majority of my protein is plant-based, and I might have like some meat at dinner. So in general, I don't really want a lot of protein, so I struggle to get it. But in the end, the range is in a feeding, right? In a sitting, you're going to try to get at least 30 grams. And I'll explain the caveat there. At least 30 grams up to 60 grams in a sitting. 30 to 60 grams. And if you're like 30 grams in a sitting, for some people like that is heinously high. The reason is that's the baseline threshold where you get like the best return in terms of what your body's doing with muscle. So it can be lower. It's just 30 is a good basement if you can hit that, which is, I know, high. But in reality, anything more than 0 is a good start. And then in terms of your daily total, I'm going to round down here, 0.8 times your body weight. 0.8 grams times your body weight is generally a rough and ready rule, which can be a lot of protein. I usually say, hey, you know what, if you're like under 5'8", you probably, which is a really like rough way to go about it. If you're like under 5'8", you probably need like at most like 150 grams in a day at most. And then it's just a body weight conversation. If you're over 5'8", then I'd be like, you know, at most it's gonna be 200 grams at most. You know, I pretty much see like nobody who's, if you're not like a serious bodybuilder with a lot of muscle, you do not usually need more than like 150, 160 grams in a day. For reference, I get about 160, somewhere in there. All right, so let's talk about food pitfalls. Any other questions? That was a great question. Okay, all right, so these are the things that tend to get people in the end. This is your checklist, okay, you guys, these next 3 slides, and it's the same slide, but I just chunk it out. This is your checklist, because if you look at it and you're like, yeah, I can say I've resolved or addressed every single thing that's here, good on you. That is a lot of work, but you figured it out. So one of the big things, not enough fun or not enough variety. If you do not like your food, even eating a lot of vegetables, we're like, oh, gross, Alex eating vegetables again. In the end, if you don't like your food, it is really hard to keep eating the food. That's all there is to it. For a lot of people, they have a thing that they're cool with eating like really regularly or every day. I'm just checking the chat again here. There's nothing wrong with having a food you eat consistently, right? We all have some things like something like a smoothie or something that's just, you can really have it super often. There's nothing wrong with that. What I would recommend is just kind of think of like, what if I did run out of food? Like, what if I got sick of all the things I'm currently eating, like my regulars? What would happen? Then you're like, oh, I would have no food to eat. You might need more food variety. More on that in a bit. Oftentimes people have no method of planning. We're going to get into that in the mind to mouth model later, but whether it's planning their intake or planning for the fact that you have a life that has a predictable rhythm. So the 5 and 2 is a classic example of eating a certain way for 5 days of the week, and then knowing that you tend to eat differently on the weekends. So maybe we plan for the fact that you tend to eat differently on the weekends, like most people tend to. From there, many people don't have a method where they plan how they actually acquire the food. Like they don't have a rhythm to it. They don't have a plan for how it gets into their home. And it's very reactive and like, I'll figure that out. I don't know when I'll do it, but I might get some food. And there's often no method of prepping to actually save you time, because a lot of people either bleed time in the kitchen when they don't want to. If you like cooking, great, do it because you want to. But if you aren't planning and prepping, things can get tough. From there, another pitfall zone is a lack of hunger skill or lack of satiety skill. An activity we have our clients go through oftentimes is, I will encourage you guys to all try this out. Basically going into a meal, rate your hunger. Put a number on it. I don't care. The scale that we usually use is 10. It's like a countdown to like bad stuff, I guess. 10 is the best. 1 is the worst. So 10, you're like, I'm not hungry at all, right? There's nothing here. And then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 is like you're eating your own arm. You're so hangry. You're eating someone else's arm. You're just incredibly hungry. And then rate your hunger afterward. How satisfied am I? You can also do the same for mental versus physical hunger, which is a very interesting experiment. For some people, they find they align perfectly. I am mentally hungry for food and my body is physically hungry for food. Some people find it's very hard to tell them apart. And some people find there's a large discrepancy between the two. Usually physical is not that high, mental is more significant, you're feeling hungry. Another piece is forcing yourself into an inappropriate box. It's like following your friend's diet kind of situation. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Don't force it. Mike's too long, diet that we can't name is great for you. right? That approach is great for you. So that's your box to and then shape and change it over time. And for many people, they ignore 80, 15, 5. Some people, for certain reasons, stick to a very strict way of eating. If possible, I don't advocate that. It maybe is good in the near term, but you do need to let yourself have some fun that you are planning. And then down here, if you have other people or creatures or things in your house that affect your ability to eat food in a way that you want to, you got to account for that. Like the number of times when we work with parents, we find that they are kind of surprised that their children don't want to eat what they want to eat, or they're surprised that their children don't eat in the way that the parents or the adults will eat. So there are a number of strategies that you can have for that, but among them, they have their own food setup, or they have their own fallback choices. Like one of our clients, they implemented an approach which is essentially, this is what the family's going to eat. If you don't want to have it, small children who are like 9 and 6, I think, then you can pick what you want out of the fridge from these, like this section of the fridge. It's just all good choices. The kids like them. They help to pick and curate what the things are, and they have a fallback that they can go to if they want to be picky. Versus the parents going, "What do you want to have this? No. Oh, we can't have that. What do you want to have? No, I don't want it. No." And that's just not going to work. So we planned for it, and then we also need to get the household on board and looped in. If you're trying to have fewer sweets, and someone you live with loves making cookies and leaving them out, they don't like eating the cookies. They just like making the cookies. I think we've all known someone like this. Then you might need to talk to that person about at least hiding the cookies from you or something. We need to have people looped in. And then missing out on water is a classic pitfall because we tend to get hungrier when we've had less water. All right, so let's talk about this here. The functionality spectrum. So this is not a seesaw. It's not like fun goes up, function comes down, right? They can actually both rise and fall. So from here, Alec, I put the lentils on for you here because I figured, do you like lentils? Fan? Okay, I also like lentils. They don't love me, but I do like lentils. So with that, it's quantity, right? The quantity matters. All right, so here's what we've got. Fun on the left side here. You want your food to have a certain degree of fun. It's got to be fun enough. For some people, they can have the same thing, super bland, super boring all the time. Other people are like, I need my food to make me laugh. I need to be entertained. Well, okay, that person's gonna have a harder time. They better make more of their food, right? Or have a high budget to go be entertained. On the other side, we have function, and function is specific to your goals. Now, I put these things based on most general health and fitness goals over here. So this is the general setup. Obviously, there's just illustrative foods. So albacore tuna. Does anyone like eating straight tuna? Oh my God. What?
Wait, do you mean like out of the can?
Yeah, like out of the can like a cat. Like, I don't mean like adding, so yeah. I wouldn't recommend eating it straight out of the can. I've done it, wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so generally the dryness will get you for starters, but tuna is a low fun food for most people, right? Okay, see, and this is the thing, by the way, I've learned in my career, never tell people what tastes good. Like, it's like, I might say this is a good restaurant, but I won't say, oh, you'll love this thing, because then it's like a 50-50 split. Some people are like, that was awful, and some people are like, that was amazing. So everyone has their own taste. Tuna tends to be a low fun, high functionality food. It's a high protein food. It tends to support most health and fitness goals. Mix it with an avocado, and then it gets a lot better. Then we jump to the other side. Donut, high fun for some people. It's like a middle fun for me. But like high fun for some people, generally low function. It contributes to happiness via the fun, but is not necessarily helpful for most health and fitness goals. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. You just got to kind of know where things fall on the spectrum. Then if we throw out like an egg, it tends to be middle high fun, depending on the person, if you like eggs or not, and higher function, healthy fat, choline, nutrients in there, protein, things like that. And then lentils, for some people, is going to be medium low fun to medium high fun. To some people just love lentils. I love lentil soup and dal lentil curries, but they are also a very high function food, very nutrient dense, very high protein, and a staple for people who have more of a plant-based diet. Now, does this make sense, this whole where things fall situation? Neato. All right, so real quick, people in the room, what's a fun food for you? It doesn't have to be functional. I'm just curious, what's a fun food?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti, yum, yes.
I love Cheez-Its.
Donuts, Cheez-Its.
So many.
I love nachos.
Kale chips, yes, Jordan says kale chips. I'm just kidding, nachos, yes.
Like all
Yes.
kinds of different variations, like homemade ones when you have the salsa.
Nachos, kale chips. Shelly says chocolate, yes, chocolate, yes. Chocolate, okay, yes, absolutely, lots of good things. So it's good to remember what are your fun foods, because you need to have those in your diet because they're good for morale. By the way, guys, I'm just going to say it right now, we are going to go long. This will be recorded. So if you do have to take off, when the time comes, you take off. Now from there, here's the takeaway. Make your food as indulgent as possible while achieving your goals. That is a very important thing. So many people think that with food, they're supposed to be living a restrictive diet. They're supposed to be just like holding back. Not necessarily the case. Make your food indulgent, make it something you enjoy. And if you don't, well, consider making it better. So let's talk about the mind and mouth model here. So it breaks down to these 4 categories: planning, acquisition, prepping, and eating. Planning, acquisition, prepping, and eating. And if you are thinking about those, peep, it's actually, yeah, it doesn't really work that well. All right, so planning, you got to plan to have enough fun. So one exercise you might want to take yourself through is saying, how many unique breakfasts, lunch, dinners, snacks would I want to have in my week? How many would I want to have to make sure that I'm not bored with my food? If you're like, you're cool with the same rotation, great, same rotation it is. But if you're saying you're like, well, I'd like to have a unique breakfast every day, and then 2 unique lunches, and then a unique dinner every night. Well, just start to actually figure out how much that is, because most people find that they are planning for maybe like 10, 20% of what they say that they would want. From there, plan for function. So this is a larger conversation, but it's just making sure you have a more kind of whole foods based diet. You have to have enough calories. You'll generally know you're not having enough calories when you find yourself like really, really hungry. That's a general cue, but you can also track your food. You can track your macronutrients in case you like numbers. But anticipate your life. The 5 and 2, the 6 and 1 are really classic examples of people saying, you know what, I want to plan my food approach to account for the fact that I will eat more food on the weekends. I will have more indulgent food on the weekends. I will have, or maybe like, Thursday night, I like to go to a happy hour. And then on the weekend, I go to brunch. I'll have more alcohol, whatever it is, plan for that. Don't be surprised, right? Don't be surprised that you like to do the things you like to do. And then if you want to break it down in terms of planning your shopping list, BLDS SMI. That's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, smoothies. Those are your categories for identifying what are the things they need to have. Many times people find they have a category that's particularly thin. There's just not a lot there, but they do eat that category. So think about it. Just be aware of it. From there, have quick grabs. You get busy. You've got a busy life. If you're the type of person that treats your car like a backpack like I do, and you want to have some food in there, have some food in there, okay? Plan for that. Don't be surprised. You've been living your life this whole time, so you know yourself pretty well. So now we get to act on it. Build your cookbook. There is not a Jordan. Is it Marshke? Okay, there's no Jordan Marshke cookbook out there. It could be, but unfortunately, there is not one made for you yet. So you have to be the one to make your own cookbook, your own recipe book, your list of things that you like. There are a few sites that I really recommend for people to check out. If you're curious about those, hit me up later. In the end, you want to have your choices available. You want to make sure that you know what you like and what you've got on hand. The ideal target, by the way, is that if you wanted to be like a planning machine, that you had to make like no food choices for the rest of your life or for a very, very long time, you would figure out how many unique meals you want to have, what goes into shopping for those things, and you'd have 6 weeks of enough different meals, like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. Not that you need to eat the same thing every week, but if you did, what you would find is you can actually just rotate. Because by the time week 1 comes back around, it's been 6 weeks since that time. And so what we often find is people, if they do take this to a whole new level, they have fewer choices to make because they've already figured out what they want. You can eat 6 weeks of tacos. You're like, I'm set.
No, Taco Tuesday is a thing in my house.
Taco Tuesday. I'm a big fan of tacos as often as possible. Tacos are a much healthier food. Hear me now, people on Zoom. Tacos are a much healthier food than people give them credit for. Depends, right? Okay, and then having a shopping list for each week. Have a plan, right? From there, acquiring your food. Sometimes people plan their food and they don't have a way of actually getting it into their house with enough time to actually prep it to eat it in the coming week. We have this thing on Sundays, it's called vegetable clean out, because we have this hangover veggies that just get neglected and then they get gross. So we have to make sure we finish actually eating those. We should probably just get them with more time, right? This is what we started doing to make sure we actually cook them. So you have your list. You don't have to cook. If you're like, I don't like to cook, Max, you don't have to cook. There are many, many affordable meal delivery options out there. There are a lot of different solutions here. Are you gonna have it delivered? Are you gonna go to the store? Are you gonna pick it up somewhere? One of the days, what are the times? Where are the stores? Are you doing like a loop? You're like, we go to Costco for these things, go to TJ's for this thing. I'm gonna get that one thing at Whole Foods because that's kind of a nice one. Treat me. And who's gonna be involved? And then from there, we have prepping. Does anybody prep food in advance? Not like all the food for the week, but just like some food in advance?
Like chocolate things?
like chopping things, actually cooking things. It's a range, right?
I like chopping.
Chop some things and freeze it. You wait.
I do it for the week.
You-
Otherwise, I end up eating it.
Zach does it for the week, which does not surprise me because he wakes up at 4 a.m. probably to prep your food. So that said, yes,
Sundays, watch football and prep food.
Sundays, watch football, watch your fingers. Hopefully you don't chop them off and prep food. Yes. So the way that we prep food, there's a variety of different ways we can go about it. If you're just from moment to moment, you're like, I'm hungry. I should make some food right now, right? You have that kind of in the moment. We've got a little bit like advanced chopping or washing. And we usually have this zone of like, I prep a few meals for the week, like, 1 to 4, you get a few things made ahead of time or simplify them. And then we have 5 or more. That's the person who's like probably doing quite a lot of food prep. And then prep everything for the week. And the reason I bring this up is because you might want to consider that you will want to eat food this week. All right, I'm going to start with that statement right there. You might want to eat food this week. And if so, you might have an idea what you might want to eat too. Maybe not everything, but you'll know some of the things. And you'll probably want to eat food again. Okay, I'm thinking this is not just like a one-off deal. So what we find is that a person can generally get about 20% more work, put in 20% more work in the kitchen to get about 100% more food. You can double your food availability if you do like a double batch, or if you've got multiple things going on at once, you can keep it organized. One of the reasons why Zach is able to prep for the whole week on just Sunday, I mean, you're not in the kitchen for 12 hours. I was like, if you say 12 hours, don't.
No, 2 to 3.
2 to 3 hours. Insane. Like clearly you guys are just eating like, I don't know, like raw meat all day or something. No, that's great. I'm confident you guys are having food you actually like to. Okay, then the last piece is around eating. So this might sound crazy, but if you made it, go eat it. The number of times people prep food, bring it with them to work even, and then don't eat it because they forgot. And then they're like, oh, it's kind of gross. It's a little warm now. I left it out for a minute. Make sure that you actually give yourself a reminder to go eat your food. Be present and aware with your food as well. We talked about hunger, satiety. This comes down to like the pacing. For example, like the whole, set your food, set your fork down. I don't really do that. Chew your food slowly. I don't really do that. But in the end, I try to be aware, but I do eat my food fast. Then check in with your hunger. How hungry am I coming in? How hungry am I leaving? Satiety, same thing. Do it because you meant to. Eat the food, eat in the way you did because you meant to. So in the end, food systems are really built with this mind to mouth model. Like if you just think about like, I'm gonna eat some food this week. What do I want to do? Think, I'm gonna plan stuff. How and when am I gonna get it? When am I gonna prep it? And what's that looking like when I'm eating it? That's really the general structure, but you can save an enormous amount of time with your food by doing it. So with that said here, we've got a few paths about how you can do this in the long term. When you start, we can move into just general best practices. Good things to do, these kind of generally healthy things, that 80-15-5, and some of the stuff around the mind to mouth model. And for many people, you'll live there forever. You just stay there long term, and it's a great way to go. And you can move back and forth, of course, between these. If you see results in terms of how your body changes or how you feel, it'll be kind of nice if it happens. You're doing good best practices. You're not doing anything overwhelmingly crazy or trying to drive anything, making it happen, because that's this category. The driving category, you go and you actually tweak your numbers, you tweak your food intake, you adjust your food plan. You're far more intentional, strategic until you get the results that you want. So you have to pick kind of where do you want to go, because in the end, oh my gosh, the crazy chart is back. If we're talking about body composition from a food standpoint, I'm going to sum it up right here. You need enough micronutrients to not get sick and feel okay. You need enough calories to either tell your body I've got more so you can build muscle, or less so you can drop body fat. There's more that happens with it. We call it the 6-2-6, 6 weeks of eating lower, maintenance for 2 weeks, 6 weeks eating lower again. There are a lot of effective ways to go about it. I don't recommend people usually go for more than 8 up to maybe 12 weeks in a calorie deficit if they can help it. You'll see if you know like a bodybuilder or physique competitor, they will go longer, but that's a different conversation. In the end, macronutrients, 0.82 grams per pound of body weight for protein, carbohydrates. The number, I can't remember the grams per pound thing, but the gist is you want at least 70 grams. People who go below 70 grams tend to run into more hormonal stuff. Fat, 0.3 grams per pound of body weight at least. Those are just numbers. You don't have to remember any of that. Supplements, they have a role, but they're mainly about avoiding deficiencies and helping you to recover a little bit better. But that's after the other stuff is taken care of. So if you ignore that whole busy slide that I just put up there, calories determine where the scale goes if we're talking body composition. Macronutrients, protein, carbs, fat, they determine what that weight is actually made up of. Calories determine where the scale goes. Macronutrients determine what the weight is made of. Because done properly over time, this is what can happen in your metabolism. This is an illustrative concept. I'm going to show a real one in a second, but an illustrative concept of a person eating gradually more. You notice the highs start to get higher and higher over time as the lows start to get higher and higher over time as well. This is someone moving in and out of fat loss phases, changing their body composition to build muscle and drop body fat. Do it properly, what you find is that you actually can stay at a leaner body composition and feel great while doing it, while eating more food, significantly more food than when you started, which is a weird kind of crazy thing to say, but it can happen, it can be done. What it looks like is kind of like this. This is someone who comes in eating the 2,000 calories a day cereal diet, and then they boop, drop their food down, 6 weeks, boop, come up to diet maintenance, boop, back down, boop, back up, increase their food intake gradually. I think we put like 2,600 in here, boop, go into another low phase, boop, come out of it, gradually increase the food intake, boop, down into a low phase, boop, go back, boop, go up, and maintain, boop, lean it out one more time, and then they're home free. So the idea of how you actually guide your body is not just eat less forever, if there's nothing else you take away from these slides that I have in front of you. Now, I apparently did not center this photo appropriately, but that's okay. So in the end, stress eating. This is what people think of when they think of stress eating. Like glass of wine, apparently music, 1 mile stare, and noodles, which I think looks like kind of fun. So in the end, stress eating is interesting because if you are proactively and intentionally stress eating, that's actually a really good thing. But if you are reactively and unconsciously stress eating, that is not. So here's what we're going to talk about. Stress eating for physiological effects, biological reasons can be very, very good. Stress eating for mental, emotional reasons is not actually helpful for us. So here's the deal. If you are eating for physiological reasons, food is actually one of the best ways to drop stress in the body, period. When you are eating food, your body senses safety. It brings down cortisol levels, it brings down stress hormones, and allows you to actually slip out of a stress state, which is why we want to do it. But we're in a world filled with mental, emotional stress all the time. So if someone is continually mentally, emotionally eating, then that is a recipe for trouble because you're just going to do it more often because your life is continually prompting that. So on the other side of it, we want to think, well, if it's just for physical reasons, like you've been working really hard, your body's been really challenged, I'm talking more like physically speaking, like exercise or otherwise, then you would do it before you need it. You plan to have a little bit more food on a given day. You plan this. It's part of the plan. It's not a cheat day. On our team, we don't talk about cheat days. There's no cheating. It's a planned indulgence. It's something you planned and you chose to do it. So it's not reactive and like, oh, my life is falling apart. I'm going to eat noodles and drink wine. So that does sound fun. Instead, it's, you know what? I've been pushing my body really hard. I've been training a lot for something. Let's say I'm going to have a bit more food. I'm going to have a bit more in terms of carbs today. Carbs, by the way, are one of the best ways you can actually drop physical stress in the body. It's really commonly found, especially in women, that when you go for a very low carb diet for too long, then you can actually cause more hormonal responses, more stress. Shelly, thanks for being here. She says, gotta go. Thanks for the info. Okay. From here, y'all, alcohol. Does anyone here drink alcohol at all? Okay, yeah. Part of a vegan diet. Alex is like, yes, I do. So yeah, so alcohol, not everyone drinks the same amount either. But at the same time, there are understandable benefits. It's fun, it's tasty. You get to have something in your hand while you talk to somebody at an event. That's great. And then, you know, alcohol does have some costs though, that we just want to be aware of. It can negatively affect sleep hormones. It generally turns off fat burn for not entirely, but it shuts down fat burn for a short period of time. And there's certain downstream behaviors like I want to eat more of certain things when I have alcohol, which is not bad. We just do it. Some people are like, I'm having alcohol. I'm gonna have a cigarette, and they're like pull her out of there, pull her out, Jordan. You run. Okay, so from there, in the end, same thing. Intentionally consume it rather than have it be a habitual thing. I made it to the end of my day. Oh, alcohol's in my hand. Don't know how it got here. We're generally thinking about planning some seasons of consumption. If you are trying to eat less food, I would recommend having less alcohol. If you're just kind of maintaining, fine, keep the alcohol content the same. And I'm not going to tell you to increase your alcohol intake at any point in time unless it is something that is really important to you. There's an expression, get drunk, don't eat junk. If you are going to be going and boozing it up, try to focus on either having more on the food side or the alcohol side is generally a strategy for it. There's a lot of nuance to it, but you can actually budget for it in your week and in your day from a hydration, protein, and veggie standpoint. We'll leave that for now. So in the end, here's the deal, y'all. Food is messy. I've said a lot of stuff, and we've hopefully given you some thoughts to ponder, but food is messy and it takes time. So start small and start with planning, because that's what we focus on in the mind to mouth model. Zoomers. So start planning. Because in the end, this is my cliffhanger for next time, no amount of challenge you put to your body with food, no amount is going to work if your body is not willing to cooperate. Huh? So yes, you can be doing everything, quote, right, but not see changes in your body in terms of strength, body composition, energy, your mood, or whatever, if your body is not willing to cooperate. And what that gets into next time, whoa, too far, oh well. Apparently I clicked it too far, all right, is capacity. Capacity. So here's the deal. Capacity is how you spend your time, how you spend your energy. The reason we end with this one is because everything I've said in the past 5 weeks does not work super well if you don't tend to capacity. So I appreciate you guys showing up here. I'm going to stick around if you guys have questions. I know we ran long. Zoomers, thank you for being here. People, thank you for watching the recording. Zach crushed it. You won't get to see the recording. Questions or thoughts before we jump off here? Okay. Goodbye. Thank you all. Bye, Dan.